Who is Meghan Markle? Episode 1, Part 2. Welcome to the second part of the first episode of Who is Meghan Markle? So, let's start. The theme for this first episode is to ask, how do people see Meghan Markle? This is important because in the systemic approach welcomes other people's points of view in our attempt to better understand our patients. We all have our own view of ourselves. That view is shaped by our self-assessment and by feedback from those closest to us, and we usually trust those voices more than any others. Unfortunately, most of my patients have a distorted view of themselves, of their lives, and sometimes even of their own personal histories. This matters a great deal because I often spend a lot of time with people exploring their personal histories. The history I will later share with you, one that I think is very relevant to Meghan and to Harry to some degree, is based precisely on this issue of personal point of view. I will come back to this later. I believe Meghan has a distorted view of her childhood. This is understandable to me because I've seen it often in my clinical work and it is very complex. Personally, I use the terms official history and real history. The official history is that what other people feed us as children, how they explain events to us. We absorb it, repeat it, and it becomes the truth. But in some instances, there is something wrong with that interpretation. And then, somewhere deep down, there is a feeling that something is not quite right. That is when a discrepancy appears. For many of my patients, part of the problem is precisely this. The story they tell about themselves is not fundamentally true, even though it feels true. My role, a bit like a detective, is to investigate with them what their real history might be, using the facts that they give me, and then re-examining the interpretation of those facts as logical, intelligent adults. And this is why other people's perspectives are so important in my therapeutic process. Anyone is welcome to come into my office with a patient, family members, partners, whoever, to share their perspective on who the patient is, what the problem might be, and even how things could change. I have a big office, so that's okay. Now, let me give you an example. I once had a patient who spent months complaining about a horribly invasive mother who would come in, take over her apartment, make a mess of her life, and create enormous stress. At one point, the mother came from Los Angeles, where she would live most of the time. She came to Lausanne, and I invited her to join us for a session, which she willingly did. And I said, well, what about this story about you coming and being very invasive? I can be very direct sometimes. And she said,
well, of course I am.
That surprised me a bit, because usually the people sort of defend themselves.
Of course I am. What am I supposed to do? My daughter is a total mess. She's totally disorganized. If I don't pay the bills don't get paid. If I don't organize,
what happens?
Then what happens?
So I looked at my patient and I said, well, is there any truth in that? She looked back, rather sheepishly.
Well, I'm not very good at doing paperwork and paying bills and this and that and stuff.
So in the end, what I found out was, well, I saw a totally different facet of my patient as someone who was nice and easygoing, but as far as administration, organization, and discipline were concerned, she was a total mess. That insight gave me a clear therapeutic direction. However, even I'm not perfect. Even myself. Yes, me. There was one point, just to give you, another point of view, another example. I was in my traineeship when I was in my last year of university, or my first year after university. I worked for a wonderful psychiatrist, Dr. Gerard Sellen. Totally brilliant. But it wasn't always comfortable to work for or with. Whenever I needed to ask him a question, something to do with therapy or practical stuff, he was never available. He was always too busy and often looked very irritated every time I wanted to ask him something. And so it seems, I started to get more and more frustrated. But I wasn't aware of it. Then a colleague of mine, she came to me and she said,
Gary, do you realize how unpleasant you're being?
Me? How can I be unpleasant? I'm a nice guy. I'm always helpful. I'm always available. She looked at me and she said,
You're being unpleasant.
So I took her at her word, well, sort of, and went round the office, the office of the practice, which was the main place where I interacted with the people I work with. And I said, Am I being unpleasant? Now, the people here are very honest, but also very polite. We are in Switzerland, after all. They said,
Well, sometimes you're a bit stressed.
Sometimes you speak a bit loud.
Sometimes you bang the door.
And I thought, hell, I'm being unpleasant and I don't even know it. That experience taught me how essential it is to have other people reflect back to us who we are and how we function. And so this brings us back to Meghan Markle. In the next and final part of this episode, I will share a range of other people's perspectives of how they see her. Positive, negative, and contradictory. That will give us one set of perspectives, just one, from which to begin our appreciation of who is Meghan Markle. Well, there you go. That's the end of this small bit. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. So, until the next time, bye for now. This is Gary. See you soon.